The early morning fog hung low over the Marine Corps training base, the sun just beginning to pierce through the gray haze. Iron Wolf adjusted the straps of her duffel bag, the weight heavy but manageable, and stepped onto the gravel path leading to the barracks. Her boots crunched softly, the sound absorbed by the murmurs and laughter that already drifted from clusters of cadets warming up for morning drills. She didn't flinch. She had expected this. After all, the whispers had started the moment she signed the enlistment papers. Whispers that would not stop until she either proved herself or crumbled under scrutiny. "Look at her," a tall Marine with a square jaw muttered, loud enough for a few others to hear. "New cadet. She doesn't even look like she lifts weights." His laughter was sharp, almost predatory. A couple of his friends snickered, elbowing each other. Iron Wolf kept walking, chin high, breathing steady. Her hazel eyes scanned the formations, assessing the cadets' stances, their movements. She had been trained to notice patterns, read subtle cues in body language. Even here, among mockery and derision, she found the rhythm, the flow of the morning routine. As she reached the training field, another cadet whispered, "She'll never make it past the obstacle course. Watch, she'll fall in the first 5 minutes." A wave of laughter followed. Iron Wolf's jaw tightened, but she refused to respond. Words were cheap. Action was everything. She had learned long ago that proving oneself began with silence, not argument. Her first drill was a simple run-and-carry exercise, designed to test endurance and strength. The sun had risen higher now, its light reflecting off the steel structures and mud-streaked training grounds. Iron Wolf grabbed the weighted sandbag, hefting it onto her shoulder. Immediately she felt the weight pull at her muscles, her heart thundering. Beside her, male cadets easily lifted heavier loads, laughing as they threw bags over their shoulders. She gritted her teeth, muscles trembling, but refused to let the strain show on her face. The mocking continued as she struggled up the first incline. "Come on, little wolf, you're slowing us down," a voice called. Another chuckle. Iron Wolf's mind went to the basics: foot placement, breathing, leverage. Slowly, deliberately, she adjusted her posture, shifted the weight, and found a rhythm. Step by step, she climbed the incline, refusing to let humiliation dictate her pace. By the time she reached the top, she had drawn a few curious glances from instructors, their eyes narrowing thoughtfully. After the physical test came the obstacle course, a notorious series of walls, mud pits, rope climbs, and balance beams. Cadets moved with mechanical efficiency, bodies honed by weeks of prior training. Iron Wolf stepped up to the first wall, fingers curling around the cold, rough wood. Her arms shook, calves burning, but she pushed upward, summoning every ounce of strength. Halfway through, she slipped slightly, but instinct kicked in. She adjusted, gripped harder, and hauled herself over. A few cadets paused to watch, whispering among themselves. "You saw that? She didn't just climb, she adjusted midair." "That's impressive," a cadet muttered. It wasn't praise, not yet, but it was recognition. Iron Wolf's lips curved slightly, just enough to acknowledge her own satisfaction. The final stretch was a mud crawl under barbed wire. Cadets groaned and complained, dragging themselves inch by inch through the sludge. Iron Wolf dove forward, sliding through with a precision that surprised even herself. The mud was cold, clinging to her uniform, but she ignored the discomfort. Each movement was calculated, every muscle engaged. She emerged from the crawl not last, not first, but solidly in the middle, a respectable finish for a newcomer in the face of relentless mockery. As she stood to catch her breath, the tall Marine from earlier walked past, smirking. Didn't expect that," he muttered, almost grudgingly. "Maybe you've got some guts after all." His tone wasn't friendly, not yet, but the edge of doubt in his voice was a small victory. Iron Wolf met his eyes for a brief moment, then looked away, focusing instead on the next drill. Later in the barracks, she unpacked her gear with methodical precision. The room smelled of sweat, leather, and gun oil. Cadets lounged, swapping stories and jabs at one another. Whispers about her performance floated through the air, some incredulous, some skeptical, some surprisingly admiring. She ignored them all, centering herself on the routines she had memorized, the exercises she would repeat tirelessly. Every detail mattered. In a world where mockery was as common as drills, excellence was the only defense. As night fell, Iron Wolf lay on her cot staring at the ceiling. Thoughts of the day's challenges ran through her mind, what she had done well, where she had struggled, how she could improve. She thought of her father, a decorated SEAL, and of every story he had told about courage and resilience. Mockery had been her welcome, endurance her path. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new tests, and she would meet them all. She was Iron Wolf, and no sneer, no whisper, no doubt could change that. By the time sleep came, she had a plan, a rhythm, and a quiet fire burning within. The Marines might mock her now, but she knew the real test had just begun, and she intended to rise, step by step, drill by drill, until no one could question her. The sun had risen higher, burning through the morning haze, casting long shadows across the training ground. Cadets lined up for the next test, an obstacle course that had broken many in the past. Iron Wolf joined silently, her uniform mud-streaked from the previous day's drills, boots worn but clean enough to keep her movements agile. Whispers floated around her, some tinged with disbelief. "She actually survived yesterday, barely, but still," one cadet muttered. Another snorted. "Survival doesn't make you strong." Iron Wolf's jaw tightened, but she refused to let her irritation show. Mockery was expected. Triumph would be the answer. The instructors blew the whistle and the cadets surged forward. Walls loomed, ropes hung like challenges, and mud pits gaped hungrily. Iron Wolf's heart thumped in her chest, not from fear but anticipation. She studied the course carefully, noting angles, distances, and potential pitfalls. The other cadets rushed, brute strength guiding them. They scaled walls with powerful arms but often wasted energy with missteps. She waited for her moment, then moved with deliberate precision, conserving strength while exploiting momentum. Every muscle, every tendon worked in harmony as she climbed, jumped, and balanced with careful calculation. By the time she reached the first high wall, a chorus of murmurs followed her. "How is she doing that?" one cadet asked. Iron Wolf's mind focused on physics, on leverage. She adjusted her grip and pushed upward, the strain burning through her arms, but she refused to falter. The top of the wall approached faster than expected, and she rolled over gracefully, landing in a crouch before sprinting toward the next challenge. Eyes followed her, some filled with disbelief, others with grudging curiosity. The rope climb was next, a test of raw strength. Many cadets struggled, shaking violently as their hands slipped. Iron Wolf's forearms screamed with the effort, but she breathed rhythmically, one controlled motion after another. She remembered her father's advice: strength without control is wasted. Use your mind as much as your muscles. Applying that wisdom, she timed each pull, letting momentum aid her, arms and legs moving in perfect synchrony. When she reached the top, she found herself ahead of more than half the cadets who had mocked her the day before. The mud pit awaited next, the most humiliating part of the course. Cadets groaned, sliding and flailing in the thick sludge. Iron Wolf dove in without hesitation, using technique rather than brute force. She rolled, twisted, and leveraged the mud itself to propel forward. The other cadets splashed behind her, wasted effort slowing them down. A trainer stopped mid-step, eyebrows raised, jotting down notes on a clipboard. "She's using the mud, not fighting it. Remarkable," he muttered under his breath. Emerging from the mud pit, Iron Wolf had earned more than distance. She had earned attention. Whispers ran through the group, a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. "She's different," someone admitted. For the first time, some of her peers looked at her not with mockery but with curiosity, wondering what else this young cadet could do. Iron Wolf ignored the noise. Her focus remained unbroken. The last obstacle, a series of unstable balance beams over shallow water, demanded precision. One false step would send a cadet plunging, humiliating themselves in front of the entire group. Iron Wolf approached carefully, her boots gripping the slick wood. She exhaled slowly, eyes scanning for irregularities. Step by step she advanced, muscles tensing with each motion, arms extending for balance. Halfway across, a gust of wind rocked the beam. Instinctively she adjusted her weight, shifting her center of gravity, and continued forward. The other cadets struggled, some slipping and splashing into the water, while Iron Wolf maintained her rhythm. When she finally reached solid ground, the instructors exchanged glances. One of them muttered, She's got instincts, timing. Maybe she's more than just a new cadet. By the time the course ended, Iron Wolf had finished in the top third, a remarkable feat for someone mocked the day before. Sweat and mud streaked her uniform, her muscles burned, and her lungs felt like fire, but she stood tall, exhaling in controlled relief. The tall Marine who had sneered at her arrival stepped forward, expression unreadable. "Not bad, better than I expected," he said quietly. Not exactly praise, but the acknowledgement carried weight. Among the cadets, some heads had turned, respect, or at least curiosity, starting to take root. Later in the barracks, Iron Wolf cleaned her gear with methodical precision. Every movement was deliberate, wiping dirt from boots, folding uniform with exact angles, checking straps and buckles. Peers lounged, some still whispering, others watching her silently, unsure how to respond. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Mockery had shifted into something else, a grudging acknowledgement of skill. Some cadets who had dismissed her entirely were now cautious, aware that underestimation could be dangerous. She lay on her cot that night, exhaustion heavy but satisfying. Her mind replayed the day's events, the calculated leaps, the mud pit techniques, the balance beam maneuvers. She thought of her father's lessons and her own experiences, realizing that her strength was not just physical. Adaptability, observation, and mental focus were just as crucial, and she had used them all. For the first time, she sensed that this base, these cadets, and even her mockers would have to reckon with Iron Wolf. Beyond the walls of the base, however, unknown to all, intelligence officers were reviewing the day's training reports. Red flags blinked over her name, notes on instinct, ingenuity, and mental fortitude. In a secure briefing room, her codename Iron Wolf appeared in a confidential report, drawing attention from high-ranking officials. The whispers she endured on the field were insignificant compared to the recognition she was about to earn from those who truly mattered. As sleep finally claimed her, Iron Wolf felt a quiet fire burning within. Mockery had been the first test. Endurance, skill, and mental sharpness were the weapons she would wield next. Tomorrow, she knew, would be even harder. But she was ready. Every taunt, every laugh, every sneer was now fuel. And somewhere deep inside, she knew the story was just beginning. Iron Wolf awoke before dawn, her body sore but her mind alert. The base was quiet, save for the distant hum of generators and the occasional shuffle of boots on gravel. Training had pushed her to the edge yesterday, but today, a different kind of tension hung in the air, one that she could sense even without being told. There were whispers in the officer quarters, hurried footsteps, and confidential messages sent across encrypted channels. Something was coming, something that went far beyond obstacle courses, mud pits, and barbed wire crawls. By mid-morning, the rumors took shape. In the intelligence briefing room, a group of officers huddled around digital maps, their faces grim. Iron Wolf had been called in unexpectedly, one of the few cadets summoned to observe. She entered quietly, taking note of the blinking red alerts and highlighted zones that detailed an unusual paramilitary presence along the border. The air smelled of coffee and tension, a mix she recognized from prior military experiences. A senior intelligence officer, Colonel Harris, tapped a screen. Rogue paramilitary group, highly organized and equipped with advanced weaponry. Satellite reconnaissance shows unusual movements. If we don't intervene, national security is at risk. He paused, scanning the group. We've reviewed cadet performance metrics. Iron Wolf, your recent reports indicate an ability to adapt under pressure. We're considering you for a reconnaissance trial, highly confidential. Iron Wolf's pulse quickened. This wasn't training. This wasn't just another test. This was a real-world scenario, one that would demand everything she had learned and more. She nodded, masking the storm of emotions inside, excitement, anxiety, and determination. While her peers mocked her on the field, unseen hands at the highest levels were taking notice. Meanwhile, back on the training grounds, the other cadets carried on obliviously. They ran drills, swung from ropes, and hurled sandbags, unaware that the small female cadet they had ridiculed yesterday was now under scrutiny for her potential in an actual classified operation. Rumors had begun to spread. Iron Wolf was being watched by higher command. though no one knew why. Skepticism had already started to fade into curiosity. Some glanced at her during drills, noting her quiet precision and strategic awareness. Colonel Harris continued briefing Iron Wolf in private. "You'll undergo specialized preparation. Your first assignment will be a reconnaissance mission, limited exposure, maximum discretion. We need someone with analytical skills, adaptability, and resilience. You've demonstrated all three under controlled conditions. This, however, will be uncontrolled." Iron Wolf listened intently, absorbing every word. She knew the implication. The enemy was unpredictable, the mission dangerous, and the margin for error non-existent. Her training in endurance, observation, and mental focus would be tested beyond anything she had encountered. She thought of her father, a SEAL veteran who had often said, "You can prepare for everything but one thing, the unexpected. That's when you find out what you're made of." Over the next few days, her routine changed drastically. Physical drills now alternated with simulations of hostile environments. She trained on rapid infiltration, stealth navigation, and coded communications, learning to relay information without exposing herself. Each exercise tested her instincts and adaptability. Her peers noticed her absence from regular training rotations, some whispering, "Where did she go? Another briefing." Others assumed it was administrative work, not realizing the gravity of what she was being prepared for. During one simulation, Iron Wolf was placed in a mock hostile village. She had to move unseen, gather intel, and extract without leaving a trace. Every creak of a floorboard, every shadow became a potential threat. She recalled every detail she had observed on the base, the angles of walls, the timing of guards, even how light fell through windows at certain hours. By the end of the simulation, instructors exchanged nods. "She anticipates patterns, she doesn't just react." "That's rare," muttered one. Iron Wolf's mind absorbed praise silently. Her focus remained on the real-world implications. Outside the training facility, satellite feeds and intelligence reports confirmed the rising threat. The paramilitary group was more organized than previously believed, moving across regions with alarming speed. Communication lines suggested advanced weaponry and an intention to strike strategically significant targets. Analysts had flagged several cadets for elite missions, but Iron Wolf's combination of speed, precision, and mental resilience made her uniquely suited for reconnaissance. Her codename, Iron Wolf, had now appeared in multiple high-level reports. At night, she lay on her cot, reflecting on the stark contrast between the mockery she had endured and the trust being placed in her now. Mockery had been public, trivial, and fleeting. This assignment, however, was private, consequential, and dangerous. She realized that leadership, skill, and resilience mattered far more than appearances. Every taunt, every whispered doubt had shaped her mental fortitude. Now that fortitude was being recognized, not by peers, but by those who wielded real power. Her mind also returned to her father's lessons. In any mission, trust no one entirely. Trust yourself first. Use what you know, anticipate what you don't, and always adapt. Those words became a mantra, guiding her through sleepless nights of preparation as she studied maps, memorized communication codes, and visualized every possible scenario. Each small detail, each calculation, built confidence. By the end of the week, Iron Wolf stood at the edge of the training compound, looking out at the horizon. The mockery of her peers seemed distant now, irrelevant compared to the storm gathering beyond the borders. Somewhere out there, a threat was moving, powerful and unpredictable. And somewhere in that chain of command, the call that would define her future, her first real mission, was already being prepared. She had survived ridicule, excelled under scrutiny, and learned to thrive under pressure. Now she was ready to face the unknown. As the night deepened, a quiet determination settled over her. The path ahead was dangerous and uncertain, but she had a skill no one could mock, the ability to see through chaos, adapt, and act decisively. Tomorrow the call could come. And when it did, Iron Wolf knew she would be ready. The morning air was sharp, filled with the smell of sweat, gunpowder, and freshly rained-on earth. Iron Wolf arrived at the training compound before dawn, boots clicking against the concrete as the rest of the cadets stirred awake. Today wasn't about simple drills or obstacle courses. Today, the instructors had promised realistic combat scenarios, exercises designed to push every limit, physical, mental, and psychological. The group of cadets stared at her, some with thinly veiled curiosity, others still harboring lingering doubt. A few had heard whispers of her rapid rise in attention from intelligence officers, though most didn't understand the details. Iron Wolf ignored their gazes, focusing on her own preparation. She adjusted her gloves, checked her gear meticulously, and breathed steadily, mind clear and ready. The first exercise was an endurance march with full combat load, guns, packs, and survival gear weighing heavily on their shoulders. Many cadets stumbled within the first few miles, groaning under the strain. Iron Wolf set a steady pace, conserving energy while maintaining speed. Along the route, instructors threw unexpected challenges, sudden changes in direction, mock ambushes, and simulated explosions. Every time she responded with precision, adapting to the chaos without panic. Her peers struggled to keep up, some falling behind entirely, while others muttered complaints. "Keep moving, adapt or fail," a trainer barked. Iron Wolf's heart pounded, muscles screaming, but she kept her rhythm. She analyzed every motion, observing patterns in the trainer's tactics, anticipating ambush points and adjusting her approach. Where others relied on sheer strength, she relied on strategy and observation. By the end of the march, she had covered ground with minimal wasted energy, while many stronger cadets staggered to the finish line, utterly exhausted. After a brief rest, the cadets moved to the combat simulation field, a mock urban environment with narrow alleys, low walls, and hidden vantage points. The instructors announced that this would be a stealth and reconnaissance exercise. Cadets were paired in teams to simulate infiltration, observation, and extraction. Iron Wolf's partner, a burly cadet named Harris, looked skeptical. "You sure about this?" he muttered. "You're not exactly." "Focus," Iron Wolf interrupted calmly. "We adapt, we observe, we execute." Her tone brooked no argument. Harris nodded reluctantly, and together they entered the simulation. The scenario unfolded quickly. Gunfire echoes, simulated explosions, and sudden alarms tested the cadets' nerves. Many panicked, running blindly or freezing under pressure. Iron Wolf moved with deliberate precision, scanning for weak points, anticipating traps, and silently signaling Harris to follow her lead. She found hidden vantage points and observed the movements of simulated hostiles, gathering data and formulating exit strategies in real time. By the end of the exercise, she had not only completed the objectives, but also guided her partner to safety without incident, a feat few cadets could achieve under such pressure. Later, in hand-to-hand combat training, Iron Wolf faced a series of opponents stronger and more experienced than herself. She studied their movements carefully, noting patterns, hesitations, and openings. When an opponent lunged, she anticipated the move, using momentum against them, flipping, pivoting, and countering with efficiency. Each victory reinforced her belief that intellect and adaptability could outweigh brute strength. Cadets who had once mocked her now watched in disbelief, whispering among themselves. Some were angry, some amazed, but none could deny her growing presence. The day didn't relent. Next came tactical navigation through a dense, simulated forest at night. With minimal light, cadets were tasked with moving silently, identifying landmarks and evading detection. Iron Wolf advanced with uncanny awareness, noticing subtle environmental cues, the rustle of leaves, a shifted branch, faint sounds in the distance. While others stumbled, triggering alarms or losing their bearings, she moved with purpose, using intuition and observation honed over countless hours of preparation. Instructors made notes, impressed by her instinctual grasp of tactical movement. Mentors began to take notice, assigning her advanced scenarios beyond standard cadet drills. One seasoned Marine officer, Lieutenant Carver, pulled her aside after the exercises. "You've got something most cadets don't: observation, precision, and mental resilience. Keep it sharp. You're going to need it," he said quietly. Iron Wolf nodded, absorbing every word. every detail mattered. Every technique she perfected was a weapon she could use in real combat, against enemies who didn't follow rules or schedules. By the evening, fatigue had set in, but Iron Wolf refused to relent. She reviewed maps, memorized coordinates, and practiced communication codes, anticipating the mission brief that could come at any moment. Cadets who had once whispered and laughed now stared, uncertain of how to react. Even the instructors seemed to treat her differently, recognizing a rare combination of skill, focus, and composure. In the barracks that night, Iron Wolf reflected on the day. Each challenge, physical, mental, and tactical, had reinforced a truth she already knew. Adaptation and intelligence were as crucial as strength. Mockery had been replaced with attention with evaluation, and evaluation with preparation. Somewhere in the higher ranks, her code name Iron Wolf was now circulating, signaling that she had the potential for something far beyond the standard training program. Sleep finally claimed her late that night, muscles screaming, mind alert. Dreams were fragmented, running drills, dodging explosions, infiltrating unknown territories. But she embraced the chaos, knowing it was rehearsal for reality. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests, and perhaps the first taste of the mission she had been preparing for in secret. Iron Wolf understood one thing clearly. The real enemy wasn't only out there beyond the borders in the rogue paramilitary camps. The real enemy could be doubt, fear, hesitation, or complacency. She had conquered mockery. Now she needed to conquer every obstacle, every unknown, and every challenge that awaited. Tomorrow she would push further. Tomorrow she would prove that Iron Wolf wasn't just a name. They were a force to be reckoned with. And in the shadows, the paramilitary threat continued to grow, oblivious to the cadet who was quietly preparing to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast them all. Night had fallen over the base, the sky a deep indigo streaked with stars. The barracks were quiet, the air thick with the scent of sweat and gun oil from a day of grueling drills. Most cadets slept, exhausted from training and routine exercises. Iron Wolf, however, remained awake, reviewing maps, memorizing coordinates, and running simulations in her mind. She had grown accustomed to pushing herself beyond limits, and tonight was no different. Something in the air hinted at change, a tension she couldn't yet name. Her intuition proved correct. Just as the moon reached its peak, a secure communication channel buzzed quietly in her room. She froze, recognizing the encrypted protocol immediately. Only high command personnel and select elite operatives used this channel. She cleared her throat, fingers steady, as she picked up the device. Iron Wolf, a deep, commanding voice crackled through the earpiece. Stand by. Mission critical. 4-star SEAL Admiral calling. Her heart raced, adrenaline surging. The voice was calm but carried authority that demanded attention. Every ounce of training, every drill, every calculation she had internalized prepared her for this exact moment. She straightened, shutting out all distractions. Admiral, this is Iron Wolf. I'm standing by, she replied, voice steady, precise, betraying none of her inner excitement. The Admiral's voice continued, outlining the situation. A rogue paramilitary group had acquired highly advanced weaponry and was planning an operation that threatened national security. Traditional reconnaissance had failed. Intelligence was fragmented and incomplete. They needed someone who could adapt, think critically under pressure, and act decisively. Someone with a combination of physical skill, mental acuity, and the ability to operate independently. You've demonstrated exceptional adaptability, observation, and resilience during training. We've been monitoring your performance. We believe you are capable of completing the preliminary reconnaissance required before the full SEAL team engages, the Admiral explained. Iron Wolf absorbed every detail. Her mind raced, calculating probabilities, environmental variables, extraction points, and contingencies. She understood the stakes. Failure wasn't an option. Every life involved, every piece of intelligence, and potentially national security itself rested on her ability to act flawlessly. Yes, Admiral. Understood, she said firmly, feeling a rare calm settle over her. Preparation had been meticulous, but execution would be everything. The Admiral continued, detailing the mission parameters. Iron Wolf would be inserted covertly into enemy territory under cover of darkness. She would gather intelligence on troop movements, weapon caches, and operational strategies. Extraction would be precise and timed. Any deviation could compromise not only her safety but the broader mission. Her movements would be monitored, but she was expected to operate autonomously, relying on training, observation, and instinct. You'll receive further instructions via secure channels. Gear and transport will be prepared within the next few hours. Stand ready. Your code name, Iron Wolf, has officially been activated for operational duty, the Admiral concluded. The line went silent, leaving a faint hum in the air. Iron Wolf exhaled slowly, absorbing the magnitude of the moment. The world outside her barracks room seemed impossibly still, yet she felt a rush of energy, anticipation, and purpose. This was no longer training. This was reality. Every obstacle, every challenge, every ounce of ridicule she had endured had prepared her for this precise moment. Immediately, she began preparations. Gear was meticulously inspected, weapons cleaned and calibrated, communication devices checked, night vision goggles aligned. Each strap, buckle, and compartment was adjusted, ensuring nothing would fail when every second counted. She visualized the insertion, the route, potential ambush points, and extraction. Her mind ran simulations over and over, anticipating every movement of both enemy and ally. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to most cadets, whispers of her imminent deployment had already reached select instructors. Eyes that had doubted or mocked her now tracked her every move with a mix of awe and curiosity. Lieutenant Carver, her mentor, watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. He knew that this operation would be the first test of her true potential, beyond drills, obstacle courses, or simulations. As hours passed, the base grew quieter, the tension palpable. Cadets snored softly in the background, unaware of the high-stakes mission unfolding in their midst. Iron Wolf reviewed her mental checklist repeatedly. Insertion point, extraction point, communication protocols, contingency plans. Every scenario played out in her mind, every decision analyzed and reanalyzed. By midnight, transportation arrived. A stealth helicopter awaited at the perimeter, engines humming softly, blending with the night air. Iron Wolf moved quickly, silently, and with precision, loading gear into her pack, double-checking everything. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the adrenaline surging beneath her skin. Failure was not an option. Hesitation could be fatal. As she boarded, the full weight of the mission settled over her. This was no longer preparation. This was action. Every hour of endurance marches, hand-to-hand combat, stealth exercises, and mental simulations had led to this. The journey from mocked cadet to operational asset had been arduous, but now she stood on the threshold of proving herself in a reality that demanded excellence, courage, and ingenuity. The helicopter lifted silently into the night sky. Below, the base receded into darkness, the voices of mocking cadets fading. Iron Wolf stared out over the horizon, every sense alert, every muscle primed, every thought calculated. Ahead lay danger, uncertainty, and the unknown. Behind her lay doubt, ridicule, and the comfort of routine. Neither would matter once she stepped into enemy territory. The voice of the Admiral returned briefly over secure comms. Iron Wolf, remember, adapt, observe, and execute. Lives, intelligence, and mission success are on your shoulders. Stand by for insertion. She nodded, even though the voice could not see her. The codename Iron Wolf had moved from whispered curiosity to active operational status. Tonight, she was no longer a cadet to be mocked. Tonight, she was the hunter, the observer, the operative. And the mission had only just begun. The night was thick and suffocating, the kind of darkness that concealed everything yet amplified every sound. Iron Wolf crouched inside the stealth helicopter, her gear strapped tightly, heart steady despite the rising adrenaline. Below, the enemy territory sprawled like a dark labyrinth, dense forests, jagged hills, and the faint glimmer of patrol lights. Every detail had been studied, every movement anticipated, yet she knew unpredictability was inevitable. This was no simulation, this was reality. The helicopter descended silently, hovering over a clearing that would serve as the insertion point. Iron Wolf double-checked her pack, ensuring communication devices were functional and weapons primed. Her mind ran through protocols: approach silently, avoid detection, observe patterns, gather intelligence, and extract without a trace. Failure was not an option, not for herself, not for the mission, and not for the lives depending on her success. "Drop in 3, 2, 1, the pilot murmured over the comms. Iron Wolf leapt into the dense foliage, landing with the precision of someone trained to anticipate impact. Leaves rustled under her boots, but she moved carefully, controlling every sound, scanning the environment. Shadows shifted, subtle movements in the distance. A patrol. She froze, blending with the undergrowth, calculating angles and distances. The patrol passed without noticing her, but she filed every detail mentally: route patterns, timing, guard habits. Every observation was a potential advantage for the larger mission. As she advanced, Iron Wolf encountered a narrow stream crossing. The water was frigid, threatening to sap her strength, but she balanced carefully, using rocks as stepping points. From a ridge above, she spotted a fortified encampment. Tents, watchtowers, and communication hubs indicated the group's high level of organization. Cameras, motion sensors, and patrol routes formed a complex web of surveillance. One misstep could alert the enemy, jeopardizing not only her life, but the intelligence she had been sent to gather. Iron Wolf paused, crouched behind a fallen log, and began documenting everything mentally: troop movements, weapons caches, and weak points in defenses. Her eyes caught a small tent where maps and documents were being reviewed by enemy officers. She calculated extraction points, timing, and the route back to the rendezvous location. Every decision required precision, every breath was measured. Suddenly, a patrol veered unexpectedly, cutting across her intended path. Iron Wolf's instincts kicked in. She ducked into the shadow of a tree, pressing herself against the bark. Heart pounding, she controlled her breathing, moving only when the patrol was fully out of sight. This was the first real test of all her training: improvisation under life-threatening pressure. She had excelled in drills, but now every mistake could be fatal. After several tense minutes, she resumed her path. The closer she approached the encampment, the higher the risk. Using the terrain to her advantage, Iron Wolf climbed a small rise, peering through night vision goggles. She captured details with a mental camera: guard rotations, defensive patterns, and key assets. When a sudden flare lit part of the compound, she froze, pressing against the shadow of a boulder. Timing was everything. She counted seconds, measured distances, and waited for the flare to fade before moving again. Hours passed, each step deliberate, every sound magnified. She located the primary intelligence hub within the camp, taking note of communications equipment and documentation. Stealth and observation were her weapons: no shots fired, no alarms triggered. She meticulously recorded every detail for extraction. The mission was working exactly as planned, until an unexpected obstacle appeared. A second patrol emerged, moving faster and more aggressively than she anticipated. Iron Wolf's heart raced, but her mind remained sharp. She scanned the area, noting a fallen log and a shallow trench. Using every ounce of training, she dropped into the trench, remaining flat against the earth. The patrol passed inches from her position, unaware of her presence. She exhaled slowly once the danger passed, adrenaline still thrumming through her veins. This was the reality of covert operations: split-second decisions, razor-thin margins, and no room for error. By the time she completed her observations and began her extraction, the first light of dawn was brushing the horizon. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows stretching and contracting with the rising sun. She retraced her route carefully, avoiding patrols and traps, documenting every encounter, every anomaly. The helicopter was waiting at the rendezvous point, engines humming silently, signaling the end of the first operation. As she climbed aboard, the SEAL team leader greeted her with a nod. "Impressive work, Iron Wolf. Every observation accounted for. You handled yourself like an operative with years of experience." For the first time, she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Praise from peers was fleeting, but recognition from elite operatives carried weight. Back on base in the debriefing room, intelligence officers pored over her notes. Every patrol route, every weapon cache, every irregularity had been accurately documented. The rogue paramilitary group's vulnerabilities were now visible, actionable. Her information would guide the full-scale SEAL operation, minimizing risk and maximizing effectiveness. Cadets who had mocked her before remained oblivious to her success, still focused on drills and routine tasks, unaware that she had already faced life-threatening danger and emerged flawless. That night, as Iron Wolf prepared for rest, she reflected on the operation. Fear had been present, momentary, sharp, but controlled. Adrenaline had surged, but purpose had guided every action. Observation, calculation, and adaptation had been her allies, turning what could have been a disaster into success. She had moved through hostile territory, unseen and precise, a ghost among enemies. In her cot, she allowed herself a moment to exhale fully. She had passed the first real test, proving that training, intelligence, and mental resilience were as important as physical strength. Mockery, doubt, and ridicule no longer mattered. Her abilities had been validated in the only way that counted: performance under real-world conditions. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges, higher stakes, more complex operations, and unexpected threats. But she was ready. Iron Wolf had stepped beyond the realm of cadets and mockery into the world of elite operatives, where every decision carried weight, and every skill could mean the difference between life and death. And she would face it all with the same focus, precision, and determination that had brought her this far. The base was eerily quiet the morning after Iron Wolf's successful reconnaissance. Cadets shuffled to drills, instructors barked commands, and routine continued as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. But inside the intelligence briefing room, tension was thick, palpable. Iron Wolf entered with the same calm precision that had carried her through the first operation, only to find a storm brewing among senior officers. Red alerts blinked across the monitors. Something was wrong. Colonel Harris gestured for her to approach. "Iron Wolf, we've confirmed intelligence leaks within the base," he said grimly. "Someone has been passing information to the rogue paramilitary group. Operational security has been compromised. We need to contain it before the main operation begins." Iron Wolf's jaw tightened. She had faced enemies in the field, but this was different. This betrayal came from within, from someone who shared her uniform, trained in the same exercises, and had access to sensitive information. It was insidious, personal, and dangerous. The rogue group had already adjusted their positions based on leaked intel, making the next phase of the mission exponentially riskier. "You're going back in," Colonel Harris continued. "This time, you'll not only gather intelligence but also identify the source of the leak. Trust no one outside of this briefing. The lives of the full SEAL team depend on it." Iron Wolf nodded, understanding the gravity. Every step in the field now carried double stakes. Failure could mean the exposure of the mission, endangering countless lives. She packed her gear with meticulous care, ensuring that every weapon, device, and comm link was functional. Her mind raced through every possible scenario, analyzing who could be the traitor and how to protect the team from further compromise. Night fell again, darker and more suffocating than before. She inserted into the enemy territory with practiced stealth, moving like a shadow, unseen and precise. The rogue group's encampment appeared eerily quiet, yet every instinct screamed danger. She observed movements, confirming that the leaks had indeed altered patrol patterns and strategies. The enemy was expecting something, perhaps her, perhaps others. Iron Wolf had to proceed with extraordinary caution. As she approached the primary hub of the encampment, a faint light flickered through a window. Inside, she observed several officers gathered over documents and communications equipment. One face stood out, a familiar figure she had encountered during drills. The betrayal hit sharply. This cadet had access, trust, and knowledge that had now endangered the mission. Iron Wolf's eyes narrowed. Every observation, every calculation she had mastered over weeks of preparation, now had to account for deception from within her own ranks. She waited, patient and calculating. Timing was everything. One misstep could alert the entire camp. Slowly, she documented movements, taking mental notes of guards, patrols, and communication signals. Then, as a patrol shifted positions unexpectedly, she seized the moment. Using a narrow ventilation route she had spotted earlier, she infiltrated the hub silently, moving with precision and awareness honed from every prior mission. Inside, the evidence of the leak was unmistakable: documents, encrypted transmissions, and recordings showing coordination with the rogue paramilitary group. Iron Wolf processed the information quickly, memorizing every detail, noting the individuals involved and preparing for extraction. Suddenly, a sound behind her made her freeze. A cadet from the base, part of the leak, had returned unexpectedly. The betrayal was now face to face. Iron Wolf's mind raced. She had anticipated worst-case scenarios, and now she executed one perfectly. She moved silently, positioning herself for optimal leverage. When the traitor reached for the comm device, she disarmed them swiftly, neutralizing the threat without drawing attention. It was precise, clean, and controlled, a display of skill and composure under pressure. With the evidence secured, she retraced her route through enemy territory, avoiding patrols and traps now alert to anomalies. Every step was measured, every decision crucial. The betrayal had heightened danger, but Iron Wolf's instincts, observation, and preparation carried her through. She emerged from the shadows, fatigue and adrenaline mingling, yet her focus remained unbroken. Back at the base, Colonel Harris and senior officers reviewed the evidence she had brought. Faces that had once doubted her stared in awe. The cadet responsible for the leak was confronted, and the rogue connection severed before the full-scale SEAL operation began. Iron Wolf's reconnaissance had prevented disaster, saved countless lives, and neutralized an internal threat that could have jeopardized everything. Amid the debriefing, Lieutenant Carver approached her quietly. "Iron Wolf, you handled yourself beyond what any of us expected. Not just skill, but strategy, composure, and courage. You've changed the way this base views what a cadet can achieve." She nodded silently, absorbing the weight of the praise. Validation wasn't in applause or accolades. It was in the survival of her team and the success of the mission. As she lay on her cot that night, the adrenaline slowly ebbing, Iron Wolf reflected on the ordeal. Mockery, doubt, and betrayal had tested her in ways nothing else could. Each challenge had sharpened her instincts, honed her skills, and reinforced the value of focus and precision. She realized that true strength wasn't merely physical. It was mental, strategic, and moral, the ability to act decisively, even when trust was broken and the stakes were life and death. For the first time, she allowed herself a quiet satisfaction. The rogue group had been observed, the internal threat neutralized, and the intelligence she gathered ensured that the next operation would be executed with minimal risk. She had proven herself not only in combat and stealth, but in judgment, analysis, and leadership under pressure. Yet even in the calm, she knew the mission wasn't over. The SEAL team would move next, relying on the precision and intelligence she had provided. Her role had been pivotal, but the world of elite operations demanded continuous vigilance. Every lesson learned, the mockery of her peers, the grueling training, the reconnaissance, and the betrayal, had forged her into something greater than a cadet. She was becoming an operative, a force capable of navigating chaos and emerging unscathed. Iron Wolf closed her eyes, allowing the tension to fade for just a moment. The mission had tested her beyond measure, but she had prevailed. Trust, skill, and unwavering focus had been her allies. Tomorrow, new challenges awaited, but she was ready. The mockery of the past, the betrayal of peers, and the danger of enemy territory had all been eclipsed by her resilience. The code name Iron Wolf was no longer whispered. It was recognized, respected, and feared by those who understood its meaning. In the shadows of the base, unseen by those still sleeping, Iron Wolf prepared mentally for the final phase of the operation. She knew the ultimate test was ahead, and when it came, she would meet it with every ounce of skill, courage, and intelligence she had cultivated. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting golden streaks across the base. The previous night's tension had faded, but the atmosphere remained electric. Iron Wolf moved through the barracks with quiet precision, her body still taut from the adrenaline of the last operation. Every muscle, every nerve was still alert, honed by weeks of grueling training, reconnaissance, and navigating betrayal. Today, she would see the results of her efforts and the recognition she had earned. The SEAL team had completed the main operation using the intelligence she had gathered. Reports confirmed the rogue paramilitary group had been neutralized, their weapons caches secured, and the threat minimized. Thanks to her reconnaissance, casualties were avoided and the operation had proceeded with precision. The success was monumental, yet the true reward for Iron Wolf was the validation of every lesson she had internalized: observation, adaptability, focus, and courage. In the command briefing room, senior officers assembled. Their eyes, once skeptical, now followed her every movement with respect and curiosity. Colonel Harris gestured for her to approach. "Iron Wolf," he began, voice steady but commanding, "your performance in the field under extreme pressure has been exemplary. You've not only gathered crucial intelligence but have demonstrated leadership, judgment, and composure beyond your years. You have earned the recognition of the highest ranks." As he spoke, a hush fell over the cadets who had once mocked her. They watched silently, some with awe, others with envy, realizing that the girl they had doubted had become one of the most effective operatives in the mission. Iron Wolf's face remained calm, but inside, a quiet sense of accomplishment surged. Her perseverance, focus, and skill had been vindicated. A secure channel buzzed, and the voice of the 4-star SEAL Admiral echoed through the room. "Iron Wolf, your codename now carries operational authority. Your work has been pivotal to mission success. Effective immediately, you are recognized as a full operational asset and are authorized for future high-level missions. Well done." The words reverberated in her mind. From whispered mockery to direct acknowledgement by one of the highest-ranking SEAL officers, her journey had come full circle. Lieutenant Carver stepped forward, a rare smile on his usually stoic face. "You've proven that skill, intelligence, and composure matter far more than appearances or assumptions. Cadets and instructors alike have learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a person who observes, adapts, and acts decisively. You've redefined what it means to be an operative." Iron Wolf nodded, absorbing the significance of the moment. She had moved from being mocked, doubted, and underestimated to becoming a respected and feared force in elite military operations. Every insult, every taunt, every challenge along the way had forged her into someone capable of thriving under extreme pressure. The mockery had been the first test, the betrayal the second, and the field mission the final proving ground. Later, in private quarters, she reflected on the journey. She thought of her father's lessons, the rigorous training, and the countless hours of preparation that had made this achievement possible. She recognized that success was not about brute force alone. It was mental acuity, observation, and adaptability that had allowed her to navigate threats both external and internal. She had learned to trust herself above all else, to act decisively, and to remain calm when others faltered. Across the base, cadets whispered, a mixture of admiration and disbelief spreading quietly. Stories of Iron Wolf's reconnaissance, precision, and courage circulated, inspiring some and intimidating others. The legend of the once-mocked cadet who had risen to operational excellence was already taking shape. For the instructors and intelligence officers, she was a living example of what focus, resilience, and intellect could accomplish when coupled with rigorous training. The next days brought debriefings, awards, and a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Iron Wolf was no longer just a cadet in the eyes of the base. She was an operative, a trusted asset, and a symbol of perseverance. Colleagues approached her for guidance, mentors acknowledged her capabilities, and even those who had doubted her offered quiet respect. Her code name, Iron Wolf, now carried weight, evoking both caution and admiration. In a final ceremony, the four-star Admiral personally addressed her, placing a commendation on her uniform. "Iron Wolf," he said, voice firm but warm, "you've demonstrated courage, intelligence, and skill under circumstances most would find overwhelming. Your actions have saved lives, secured critical intelligence, and proven that dedication and focus are as lethal as any weapon. The United States Navy SEALs recognize you as one of our own. Welcome to the operational fold." Iron Wolf's eyes met the Admiral's, steady and resolute. She felt a rare, profound sense of pride, not from accolades or recognition, but from the knowledge that she had succeeded against every doubt, every obstacle, and every threat. She had transformed from the cadet ridiculed on her first day to a highly skilled operative whose skills would protect lives and national security. As she left the ceremony, the base seemed different. The echoes of mockery had vanished, replaced by respect, curiosity, and inspiration. She walked with quiet confidence, aware that new missions, challenges, and threats awaited. But she also knew one thing with certainty. Iron Wolf had proven herself, and nothing, mockery, doubt, or betrayal, could ever take that away. The sunset bathed the training grounds in gold, a symbolic reminder of the journey she had completed. From ridicule to recognition, from cadet to operative, every step had been earned through skill, resilience, and unshakable focus. Iron Wolf was no longer just a name. She was a force, a symbol of perseverance, and a living testament to the power of preparation, intelligence, and courage. And somewhere beyond the horizon, threats waited, but Iron Wolf would be ready, always ready.